You're listening to Crystal and Emily on Love Your Shelf, the best librarian podcast in the extensive and highly competitive field of librarian podcasts.
Oh, hello.
Well, hello there. I am glad to be back at work.
Yeah, never thought anyone would say that ever, but here we are. Glad to be back at work.
So it's February, 22nd, and we had a forced vacation last week.
Yeah, like the worst vacation I've ever had to take.
Really, it was not relaxing. It was. So we were exiled from the library, and partially
I think exiled is the right word. Yeah,
it felt like
it's what it felt like. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then even though we knew, days before going into the weekend that we were going to have a big winter storm.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody really knew what to expect.
No, I mean we postponed a program that was supposed to be I guess, right at the beginning of the storm. And we were, I don't know, I was talking about it like, okay, yeah, next weekend when we do it. And there was just no way it could have been. We could have done that program like normal.
No, we were, it was pretty wild.
Yeah.
But glad to be back. And hopefully everybody is back with power and water and everything. Yeah. Heat. I know that there are still some people who are probably without one of those things, but hopefully we're on the way to back to normal.
Yeah. And now we can talk about the things that kept us somewhat sane while we were home.
I don't know if I would go that far, but entertained for sure.
Our super lame attempt at staying sane.
Yeah.
By watching and reading things. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you'll get an idea about my sanity based on the things that I read and watched.
Cool.
Yeah. I revealed too much on this.
I was about to say, I'm getting comfortable. I'm intrigued.
Well, the first thing that I read was, and I may have mentioned that I was going to read it last time, but I read My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. And I really, really was into it. It's not something that I would normally read. It's kind of a horror sort of, kind of even like a slasher itself, but it's based on, there's a ton of, it's like shot through with references to slasher films, and so it's sort of like very meta, very aware of itself, and the main character is a teenage girl who has just steeped herself in slashers, and she really, really, really wants to experience like a slasher film in real life.
What?
Basically. Yeah.
Oh, you stupid girl. I'm just kidding.
Well, it's just like with everything, anything, people always talk about, what kind of fictional characters do you want to meet? What kind of fictional place would you want to go?
Sure, yeah.
And, this girl's just happened to be like Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween and stuff like that.
And I mean, I just think it goes along with, never meet your heroes to me, no matter what that fantasy is.
Especially if it's Freddy Krueger.
But yeah, especially if it's Freddy Krueger. It turns out he's actually super nice.
Yeah. He's a mensch.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, I would say like reading it as somebody who doesn't normally go in for that stuff, but I have seen a lot of those movies, and one of the things that I really liked about it is that she likes like the throwback kind of slashers, not the stuff that started coming out in the 2000s, which was terrible.
I've said before that was like when I was in high school what was coming out, and I think that sort of set the bar for what a slasher or just horror film in general was. And it wasn't until later that I was like, oh no, there are actually really good ones out there.
Right. Ones that actually have like pacing and, tension and not just terrible
stabbing.
slasher stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or slasher, but, not like torture or weird stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, as a kid, I don't know, I wasn't really allowed to watch really probably rated R stuff. Yeah, so a lot of those movies were for good reason. Mm-hmm. But I did, somehow skirt those rules occasionally.
Of course.
And then, as I got a little bit older and I could choose what I wanted to watch, a lot of those things are the stuff that you put in when you're at a sleepover and, or when you're, you want that thrill and that scare or whatever. I don't think, for people who aren't into scary movies, I think they think, well, why would you want to be scared or grossed out or what, all of those things.
Right.
But it is kind of like, and I know you like true crime kind of stuff. It is kind of I don't know, like, how you can't avoid, like if you have a place when you were a kid where you lost a tooth and you always want to put your tongue in there, or if you have when you have a loose tooth and you'd wiggle it, or you have it's something like that. It's like a compulsion kind of thing.
Yes, a compulsion. Yes.
And there is a little bit, there is something to that. And it's also like this vicarious, because you're not in any danger. Mm-hmm. But, humans have like a fight or flight response, and you gravitate to those things, I think, because we are relatively safe.
Yes.
In our lives,
and I don't know, and it's always sort of I don't know. I always want to feel prepared. I feel like a part of me sort of wants to, I don't know, have not a set in stone plan. I don't have,
sure.
Don't have, like, pages of
yeah. I'm gonna find your notebook one of these days where you've written down your escape plans.
My escape plans. But I do think for me it's a little bit of that sort of
what would you do? What would you do?
What would you do? And sort of that fascination with that side of human nature. It's so unbelievable and like untouchable to me. Thankfully, knock on wood. And so, I think for me, it's some of that too. That's just sort of like, I don't want to say fascination sounds like, it gives it a positive spin, but
it is. There can be, I think, a dark fascination or it doesn't mean that you get some kind of thrill out of it, but
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or at least I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt on that.
Yeah. No, I'm like, yeah.
Oh no, I would never. But anyway, so it's good because it's like from this teen girl's perspective, and she's like an outcast, of course, and she, she's the spooky girl who loves all the horror movies, but like this scenario manifests itself in this little town where she lives.
Wow.
And she has all these theories about the main tropes that you see in scary movies, like and she talks a lot about Scream, and how in that movie they're also talking about how this is what scary movies are like
right
while they're in one,
right.
And so she's kind of like taking that a step further, and she has this whole theory about the final girl. So in a lot of those movies, there's the girl who, like the Jamie Lee Curtis.
I always try to pick out who it is from the beginning, because I feel like it's not always obvious.
Right.
But anyway, yeah.
Or and then it is sometimes like in Scream with Sydney is she's the final girl, and so they go through these horror this whole time, like throughout the film or the book or whatever it is. But it just serves to like make them stronger, make them, capable of fighting back. And so the girl meets this new kid in town, basically, and decides, well, she's so perfect and beautiful that she must be the final girl.
Oh.
And so then her theories get put to the test because real things start happening. And so,
Ooh.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I found it really enjoyable, and
Yeah.
I like Stephen Graham Jones, so
Yeah,
I'll
no, I
always
think
pick
that
up
sounds
whatever he's written.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's very different from other things that he's written. So
Uh-huh.
it really had the feeling of like an era, that even though
Uh-huh.
it's set in contemporary times, she's referring back to all these 70s and 80s things, and she's
Yeah,
kind
so
of,
it feels like that a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Oh, that's
So
great. And
really
what was it
enjoyed
called
that.
again? My Heart is a Chainsaw or something? I love that.
It's a great title, yeah.
It is. It is.
And then I revisited a couple of books by Walker Percy,
Yeah.
who wrote in the 60s, early 70s. He wrote The Moviegoer and Love in the Ruins,
Mm-hmm.
which the subtitle is The Adventures of a Bad Catholic at a Time Near the End of the World. And so I felt like maybe I should revisit these that I read a long time ago.
Feeling a little like the end of the world right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I need some advice.
Yeah.
And so, but I hadn't read them in a long time, and they really hold up. They're really, really good.
Cool.
The
Oh, that's the best.
Moviegoer is set in New Orleans in like after World War II,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's about how like the South is kind of struggling. Traditions are sort of
Mm-hmm.
dying, and
Mm-hmm.
according to like his family,
Mm-hmm.
he's a stockbroker who just doesn't have any kind of direction, and the main character is,
Mm-hmm.
and he only sees meaning in films
Uh-huh.
or books, not in his like boring everyday life. So
Uh-huh.
he's kind of like searching for himself.
Right. Okay.
And anyway, that one is great. But the other one, Love in the Ruins,
Uh-huh.
is more of like a sci-fi thing or speculative fiction,
Yeah.
and it was published in 1971, and it's also in set in Louisiana, but in a small town.
Uh-huh.
And the main character is Dr. Thomas More,
Uh-huh.
um, like modeled on Sir Thomas More, who
Uh-huh.
wrote Utopia, and he's a psychiatrist who has invented a device called the ontological lapsometer, which diagnoses the the mental issues that are at the root of society's
Uh-huh.
collapse,
Uh-huh. Okay.
basically. And on a little side note, I read both of these books, more than 20 years ago, and I had a coincidence with Love in the Ruins,
Ooh.
and I have it written down somewhere, but I can't even remember exactly where I saw this other thing. But I
Yeah.
knew that in a book that I had read that the character drinks a slow gin fizz.
Uh-huh.
And that was the first time I'd ever heard of that, which,
Uh-huh.
not surprising because I was a kid when I read it, like I wasn't
I'm
fully
familiar.
exactly. And it's not something that you see, like you don't see that on menus
Right.
now,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's old fashioned. And I could never remember this
What?
book where
Uh-huh.
I read
Where it
that,
was. Oh
where
my
it
gosh.
was. And then so I would see it in something else, and I was like, oh, it's just right on the tip of my tongue. Where have I
What
seen this
was
before?
it? Yeah.
And so it
Ah,
became this
that's
book.
the
But
best.
yeah, and I think the reason why it stuck out to me, for one
Uh-huh.
thing, slow gin, I didn't know what that was. I
Uh-huh.
still don't exactly, but
I was about to say, enlighten me if you know, but
yeah, I honestly don't know. And but it's made with an egg white. So you would
oh.
froth an egg white and add it to this cocktail.
Is there fizziness though? Like, is it
That's the fizz part.
carbonated?
No.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Okay. I was
exactly.
imagining that with like carbonation and That's
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
And the character makes these for himself, and he's allergic to eggs, and so it almost kills him. But
but it's so delicious that
he's an alcoholic, and I guess he just really wants it.
Okay.
It's like he's testing his boundaries. It's very much like in the theme in the other book, where he's got all of this like angst and
yeah.
existential doubt,
Yeah.
and
If it kills me, so what?
right. And anyway, so it stayed with me because that's gross. Why would you want to drink that? And anyway, so I still have never had one, but
and honestly, the name alone sounds like it could be good.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'll be sure to never order one of those.
Or at least know that that's what you're getting.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing that I thought was, or I don't know, funny about it is that this was in a time before Google. So now you could, type in, novel slow gen fizz, and you would somebody would have said, yeah, this is the book there, where that's famously in the book. But at the time, there was no way.
Had to.
No way of finding
it had to, slip out of your brain somehow.
Exactly.
And that doesn't always happen. Exactly. Yeah.
And anyway, it just had me thinking about how, not that long ago, when I was an adult, you couldn't Google everything, and you had to actually remember stuff.
Yep.
And I am glad that we're out of that era.
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid when that happened, and I'm definitely a certain kind of person now. I could never go back to being without Google. I think I would have to retrain my brain.
Yeah. Well, and I,
to remember stuff.
Yeah. Well, as a librarian, and before that, as a teacher, I was like an early adopter of all that. I was like, I am down with it. And I can remember my family being really resistant. So like if they would, ask something or have something. And I'd be like, okay, I'll look it up. And they're like, no. Can't we just try to remember it? And
and I found that certain things where, Nick and I will be having a conversation, and I'll be, before I Google it, let's just like try to think if we can remember it. And, we wait 5 seconds and then say, never mind.
Never mind. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm with you. If I can have the answer now, I want that answer.
Yeah. Anyway. And so this was just one of those examples of like before Google, after Google, and how life has changed. But it's also a great novel. It's really darkly funny, and I mean, just the device name, the ontological lapsometer, that's got to tell you right there.
What you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's great.
So then, we were home, and thankfully I had power. And so I made use of it and watched some stuff. I watched a couple of movies, which, I always like mark that as being significant because I have a tendency not to watch movies these days. But
anything good?
Well, okay. The first
I feel like I have a few good things that I've watched, but I just feel like I've had kind of a dry spell with movies.
There was a bit of a slump. No, I watched two that actually couldn't be further apart from each other. But their the titles are oddly similar. So the first one was The Little Things. It's on HBO. It's got Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and
yes, I remember I asked you about it. I asked if you okay, I'm so ready to talk about this.
Okay, good. And it took me a bit to get into it. I have to say, I'm not a huge Denzel Washington fan, or like, I think can be very broad. He's like loud and big, and but he was not like that in this,
right?
And it was a very quiet film.
Yeah, and I'll just say, so when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the movie Remember the Titans. And like I was like, 10, and there were a lot of cute boys in that movie. Oh,
Sure, yeah.
that was why. And Nick also loved Remember the Titans, not for the same reason. He loved it because it was a football movie and he was obsessed with football. So we spent the whole movie referring to Denzel Washington as Coach Boone, his character in Remember the Titans.
Right.
That made it hilarious. I'll just
That
say
does
that.
change the tone, yeah.
It really did. Anyway, continue.
No, it is a creepy thriller, and like I said, it's really quiet. It's almost doesn't even fit in the thriller category, because you usually think about thrillers as being a little more high tension, her fast paced,
Right.
And it wasn't. And Denzel Washington plays I guess he's a deputy, sheriff's deputy or something at the beginning, and he's in a small town, and ends up going back to, is it, I guess it's Los Angeles?
Yeah, I think they're in LA.
Yeah. And so he ends up like consulting on a case with the Los Angeles Police Department where he used to work. And things had, for whatever reason, he's not working there anymore. And there's something happened. And then Rami Malek plays the young hotshot detective.
Yeah.
And Jared Leto, surprise, plays a creepy guy.
He is a real good creep.
He is. And at first, I guess maybe because of how they shot him in the first shots that he's in, I was like, that guy looks like Jared Leto.
I know. Can't be. My God, when they show him through the curtain or something.
Yeah.
I did the same thing.
And I also, one of the things that I'm doing with movies these days is I will not look at anything see what they're about.
Right.
And I'll just because I don't want people to, I don't want to hear their reviews or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not like that about other stuff, but movies, I want to see if it looks interesting.
Like, even if I'm watching, like, if I go to watch a trailer, I'll watch maybe 30 seconds of the trailer and that's it, because trailers,
they give everything away.
Yes, I feel like I've watched the whole movie.
Yeah.
And they'll put the funniest parts in it, or so
the ending that starts off at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't know. I had real high hopes going into this movie, and I enjoyed watching the movie. I hated the ending.
Yeah. And we won't say anything about what the ending actually is, but it was disappointing.
Yeah. Like, Nick and I were just kind of looking at each other like, wait. What? Wait. But I did enjoy watching the movie. I mean, and that rarely happens,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Anyway. It's funny. Yeah. I definitely had the same. I think. Well, I don't want to say anything that's going to give anything away, but
I know.
It definitely.
I hope I didn't.
No. But I think it turns your expectations on your ear. Like they're just.
Yeah.
It's very different in the
because I felt like they were sort of. I mean,
it was almost a philosophical statement, sort of.
Yeah, and I wasn't. No offense, y'all, but I wasn't really here for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I got strapped in to go on this roller coaster ride, and then, it took me for a few loop-the-loops, and then it was straight on after that.
And then and then you wake up in your bed the next day. What happened?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, yeah. I'm glad you watched it though.
Yeah. No. I like you said, it was enjoyable. I'm glad that I watched it, but I was taken aback.
There were just some moments, especially at the end, where I was just kind of like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's what would have happened.
Yeah.
And those choices would not have been made.
Yeah. Exactly. It was. Well, partly it was out of character.
Yes.
for
I
what they
feel
had
like we're
set up.
talking about the same thing, and
Yeah.
when we get off of here, we can talk details. But
Yes. So, out there, anybody who's listening, watch it and then let us know what you think. Because
let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I watched, like, as a palate cleanser, I guess. So the first one is The Little Things. Then I watched The Map of Tiny Perfect Things.
Oh, yes.
Which,
that's really funny.
yeah. I was like, come on, guys. What's
come
next,
on. Yeah, really.
And it is like have you seen it?
No, but when I did watch the trailer, well, about 30 seconds of the trailer, and I kind of felt like, okay, it's a teenage Palm Springs, which came out late last year, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Which
And
I enjoyed.
I loved Palm Springs. I was really, I thought it was just so delightful. So I want to watch it. I do want to watch it.
It's worth watching, but that really does sum it up very nicely. It is a teenage Palm Springs.
Okay. Which, yeah, I mean,
but it plays with science, and it plays with, or pseudoscience, I guess, because these characters are living the same day, like a la Groundhog Day, but there's two of them.
Again. Yes. Yeah. And I will say, I really liked in the trailer, the girl says that she's been solving crime with that day. And I was like, oh, that's what I would do.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of like, what would you do? And then you get to play that out, and they do a lot of that kind of stuff.
And I love that. Honestly, I could watch that for a long time. Yeah.
And it's a much more like, or that movie was much more like positive and optimistic maybe than Palm Springs was, because what they get
Palm
up
Springs
to
is a little dark. Yeah,
they're doing destructive things. And in this film they're like trying to figure out how to appreciate the good things, or to identify and appreciate the good things.
That's sweet. Then I like that. I like that there's another take on that, because really, with Palm Springs, I was kind of like, okay, we've seen Groundhog Day, and obviously they took a completely different direction. Yeah. And I don't know. I do kind of feel like they opened a door where I'm happy to see how these different scenarios would play out. Yeah. Because on the other hand, I think if like in Palm Springs, they go into a bar and they start doing this like ridiculous synchronized dance they've come up with, and they just look like idiots. But I don't know, I loved like to imagine the freedom in that, where who cares? You're not going to remember this. And so yeah, there are moments like that
it did. It made me wonder, like, how many times would I have to live the day over before I would stop caring about that kind of thing?
Exactly.
And just be free.
It wouldn't be the first week. No. It wouldn't be.
No, because first of all, you don't know how long that's going to last.
Yep.
Like what? Yeah. Are you going to wake up one day and it is the next day eventually?
And they're hey, about that weird dance you guys came in and did.
Yeah, it would take a while for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, anyway. I wonder, like, how far would you take it, for sure,
Right.
It's an interesting thought experiment. And so this movie is definitely enjoyable.
Yeah, cool. I need to watch it.
But yeah, much more on the cute side.
Yeah. That's great.
Then I watched a couple of true crime things. Let's see.
I bet you watched one of the things that I watched.
You tell me what you watched, and we'll
I can't even. I didn't even write it down. I totally forgot about it. But the on Netflix, the new special about the Cecil Hotel. And,
yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What's her Elisa Lamb? That's her name.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you guys. That's all I can say.
I remember when that was happening, like when she went missing.
Oh.
And I remember going online, because so basically what happens is this girl comes to Los Angeles again, from Canada. And she's on like a trip by herself. She's young, like 20, 23, something like that.
Yeah.
And she has a blog where she's like talking about her travels and her life and, all this kind of stuff. And so it was kind of like a unique scenario in that she checks into the Cecil Hotel, which is a very like dangerous place.
Infamous. Yeah. I loved the guy who had experiences there back in the, I don't know, 70s or something that they would bring in every now and then in the documentary.
Yeah. There were some good characters.
Yeah, definitely.
In the interviews.
Yeah.
And so she checks in and then never is seen again. So she never checks out of the hotel. She just vanishes. And but it really like lit up the internet at the time, because first of all, this is 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And because she had a blog, so people were trying to like trace her steps and try to find clues. And they decide that, anyway, all these internet sleuths go on YouTube and on their own blogs, and they try to find who they think kidnapped her, killed her, or whatever happened.
And there were so many different theories about what even happened to her in the first place.
Yeah, and they one guy who's I thought that was so sad about the one of the guys that he was a musician, but like the
sleuth guy,
death metal guy. No,
oh my god! Oh no! Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
And so this guy had all these videos that were out, and they found some kind of coincidences with his videos, and
he had been staying at the
that he had stayed at that hotel, even though it was
time.
but it wasn't at the same time. And
yeah.
And so basically they went online, and thousands of people called him a murderer and decided that he was the killer. Yeah.
And it was sad because, I mean, he, had this like, I don't know, his agenda was sort of death metal, devil worshipy, and which I don't agree with at all, but it kind of, this sort of broke him. Like, he was like, look, man, I know I put on this tough act, but I'm a human, and
and I didn't do anything wrong.
And I did not murder anyone. Yeah. Well, and then what I was just gonna say, of course, the video footage. There's video footage of her on an elevator in the hotel that's released, and it's like the spookiest thing I've ever seen.
And I think that's part of what captured everybody's attention, because they only had this like 2 minutes or something of footage, but she's standing in an elevator and the doors aren't closing, and she like ducks out and looks both ways, and then she seems like she's talking to someone, but there's nobody there, and
she's like moving her arms and hands all erratically, which was what really, I don't know, unsettled me for some reason.
It's very disturbing in a really subtle way. It's one of those things that, like, people who make scary movies try to come up with that stuff.
Yes.
And it reminded me of the kind of scare that is like at the end of the Blair Witch Project, when it's just the person standing in the corner looking in the wall.
I mean, that image is like the image that comes into my head when I'm trying not to get scared about something, but the scariest thing I can think of pops into my brain.
It's a very subtle, simple thing, but it is terrifying because it doesn't make sense, and
just the whole story it's fascinating. It's so sad. I mean, it's a deep, ultimately, you look pretty deeply into mental health and mental illness, and that comes into play. And there are so many layers to it. It was I
Yeah,
couldn't
and it
stop
was really
watching
well
it.
done. So,
It
and for,
was.
even though I was familiar with it, there was a lot of new stuff, that was uncovered, and interviews with people
Yeah,
who were
the
involved, and
history and
yeah.
yeah, it was really
So
well done.
it's worth watching for sure.
Yep, agreed.
And then let's see what else. Oh, well, this is not true crime, but I watched, and this is another thing that's like out of character for me. So I was just looking for something light and something,
Yep.
or I don't know, maybe not light is not the term, but anyway, I watched Firefly Lane.
What is that? Well, I know that title.
It's based on a book by Kristen Hanna. So we see it.
Maybe I know the book title.
Yeah, and Katherine Heigl is in it. Which where's she been?
I know.
And Sarah
So
Chalk
true.
is also. She was in Scrubs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elliot, right?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Okay.
so it's like 10 episodes. I watched all of them, and it is very like it takes place in two different or several different time periods, but mostly it's like when these two girls are teenagers and they meet each other, and then they're friends,
As they grow up.
as they grow up, and they're. But it's very much like reminded me of Poison Ivy with Drew Barrymore from back in the 80s.
I've never
There's like
seen
this.
that, but
Oh,
I know what you're talking about.
you don't need to see it. It's
Okay.
it's a real bad B movie, but but if you were a kid in that time period, everybody saw that. But so it's about basically Katherine Heigl's younger version of herself. She doesn't play this. They don't play the younger versions of themselves, thankfully. But
I was gonna say that would be hard to watch.
Yeah, but she's like this wild newcomer who becomes friends with this shy, awkward girl, and they live like across the street from each other. And and it goes back and forth between like when they're first getting to know each other, and they're not friends at first, and how all that works out, and then goes back to when they're in their 40s, and like I guess that would be the early 2000s. So for one thing, you've got these two different settings which are fantastic. You got the 80s
and the early 2000s.
Early 2000s. Exactly. And
the
fashion alone.
Yeah.
And Katherine Heigl's character becomes like an Oprah type. Like,
oh, that's funny.
Yeah, where she's a journalist, but then like becomes super famous and has her own television show and all that kind of stuff. And then the her friend, who was smart but quiet and shy, she also goes into journalism, but on the producing side. But she gives it up because she has a child and she stays home with the kid.
Okay.
And so anyway, two very different paths.
lives.
Yeah.
Right.
And they have, what my sister and I used to call real teen issues. And so there's, that kind of stuff. So it's not all like hearts and sunshine, but but it's very soap opera-y in how it deals with it. And there's lots of, funny stuff interspersed with the harder stuff. And
I feel like real teen issues needs to be just RTI. I mean,
exactly.
How is that not already a known thing? I really love that.
Because exactly what
yes, it's capital R, capital T, capital I.
Yes. And the thing is, because it's these two friends, even when they're 40, they're still having real teen issues,
Yeah. Oh, I can relate. I think.
Yeah, me too. And the titles of the episodes are like named after 80s songs or quotes or things. things that would have been memes had there been such a thing
in the
at the time.
80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was cute, and I don't know if they're gonna have another season of it, but
You enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah.
Nice. I'll have to give it a shot. It was one that I put on my list. It's gotten to where, like, again, you mentioning that, I was like, why do I know the title of that? It's gotten to where, I mean, I add so many things to my list, and then I don't go back and look at my list. Yeah, no, I feel crazy.
No, I know.
I can't keep up.
I use, for books, I use Goodreads, so that as soon as it's something that I like, it's on my radar, then I put, on my to be read list.
Yeah.
But with shows and stuff, I kind of rely on the apps, or the
suggesting things.
Yeah. So if I like put on Hulu, it's going to tell me, oh, do you want to watch the next episode of this thing that you were watching?
Like, oh yeah, I guess so. Okay. I did watch that. Yeah.
And I don't really spend any time curating it, but
yeah,
I haven't had a lot of luck with that lately.
Yeah, there's just a lot of content out there, and I don't have time, frankly, to sit and watch the stuff that doesn't hold my attention.
Right.
So I'll just kind of, I'll give something a shot, and immediately I'm kind of, if it's not holding my attention after a certain point or piquing my interest in any way, moving on. But
cut your losses, go on to the next.
Yep, exactly.
So what else have you been partaking of?
Well, okay, this one was one you mentioned a while ago. It's called The OA. It's on Netflix. Yeah, and oh my gosh, I love it.
It is so bonkers, but
I was so trying to explain what it was about to my sister, and eventually I was like, you know what, scratch everything I said. Basically, it is kind of like older teenager Stranger Things, darker Stranger Things in some ways, because it is. I mean, it's it's some outcast teens who aren't really friends. They all kind of come from different walks of life. This strange girl. Well, okay, I guess everyone knows who she is. This young woman has been missing for 7 years. Mm-hmm. She shows back up out of nowhere. She had been blind when she went missing, and now she isn't blind anymore. So she's this miracle, and everyone's really interested in her and her life. And she, I guess, just has an effect on certain people, some sort of effect. They don't really put it into words, but you just sort of see that certain people are really drawn to her. And this is where it starts to get dicey.
Yeah.
Like, she has this insane story about sort of where she came from, and gathers this group of people to help her with this mission. And
the whole time you don't know if she's just a crackpot or...
Yeah.
And it really does, like, it'll give you the sense that maybe she's for real, because at the beginning, that is a spine-tingling moment at the beginning, when they realize that she can see.
Yes, when her parents walk into the room, and she says, "I'm sorry, who are these people?" And then she touches her mom's face and realizes that it's her mom, and she says she's never seen her parents before. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy.
Yeah. And so, that set up from there, you think, okay, well, just that alone, that's pretty good evidence that something crazy is possible, or,
Yes.
But then you continue to question that as her story gets
and they
crazier.
Do, and it's I kind of went back and forth between, like, okay, if she is crazy, she's still this really, like, amazing person, and I stand by her, and I still think they should help her. I mean, and I will say too, there are just some great edge of your seat moments. I mean, moments where, like, there were moments I couldn't look at the screen in a good way, where I was just like, I cannot, it's drawn out, and it's great. It's so great.
I was so sad when I heard that they were not going to have a third season.
No,
Yeah.
We have like 3 episodes left in the second season, because that was another thing, is the second season was
So different.
maybe, so different, maybe better, but it
Yeah.
still, it didn't discount anything from the first season. It just built off of it really beautifully. And and it's totally unpredictable. That's what I loved too. It was I haven't heard or seen anything else like it. I had no idea what was going to happen next. I love it. I love it. And I can't believe I didn't start it before this, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Now you're making me, I'm going to go rewatch it because
you should. Everyone should. I love it.
I was waiting because it was still like until few months ago, I guess, they were still planning on having a third season. And so I was like, well, when that comes out, I'll watch the whole thing. And
the whole thing again.
But then
because I was telling Nick, even, like I said, we still have 3 episodes to go. So a lot is going to happen between now and the end of the series, I guess. But I was saying, even, whether they have a third season or not, they're building up sort of this world that they could potentially have another story to play off of. So that's kind of a shame, but wow. Yeah, it's really well done. And I am always a sucker for stories about a bunch of people who have nothing in common and they don't like each other at first, and then they come together. Like, I love it. It's why I loved The Breakfast Club so much when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So that I really love it. So thank you for that recommendation. And Nick too. Like, I had to make him stop last night. I was like, hey, I have to go back to work tomorrow. We can't. And I was like, hey, we'll have 3 episodes to watch tomorrow. And he was like, you're right. Anyway, the other thing that sort of, I watched a few different things over the last week, but the other thing that sort of stood out was a show set in Luxembourg, actually, called Capitani. And it's, I looked up, I was convinced it was, German, but apparently they speak Luxembourgish. That is a language. And so, so it's, there are subtitles, go into that. I don't know, if you're like me, I need to kind of get into a certain mindset before I watch something, especially a show, like something really long like that with subtitles.
They don't normally bother me, except like lately I watch stuff while multitasking.
Yes, exactly.
And so you can't really do that.
It's kind of frustrating. Like, I'd look away for a second and it's a murder mystery. And so I'm needing to keep track of everything. And so, I'd look away for 10 seconds and have to rewind it. I mean, I did that constantly watching it, but it was really good. It was, I just feel like I was saying, I feel like there are so many murder mysteries out there, and, I'll watch the first episode and a half. And then if it's like, as I was saying, if it's not holding my attention or if it's not bringing anything new or exciting to the table, I scrap it. But this one held my attention, and it was kind of my favorite murder mystery formula. It was a small village where everyone is a liar. Everyone knows each other and lies for each other. And there's this big city detective who was not a particularly likable character. But he and a local cop who has a heart and knows everyone, they, partner up, and a teenage girl is found in the woods and her twin sister is missing. And so it's sort of a, it's a murder / missing teen story. And it wasn't my favorite. I always compare everything to Broadchurch. It was no Broadchurch, to say the least, but I enjoyed watching it, and it held my attention, which says a lot. So yeah, I do recommend it. It was a lot of fun.
How many episodes is it?
Oh, it was, I will say, okay, it was 12 episodes, but they were 30-minute episodes, which I liked. Yeah. Because I kind of felt like, it was fairly fast paced, and, something sort of big happens every 30 minutes or so, at the end of each episode. And so I did feel like I liked the pace of it a lot, which is a lot of the holding your attention part of it.
Right.
And I don't know. They might have another season. I don't really care if they do or not. I felt like they wrapped this one up, and that's fine. It was a good story. So, but yeah, I don't know. It was one that I just kind of clicked without thinking. I have to do that sometimes. Otherwise, I'll search for an hour.
I hate that.
I know. It makes me crazy. It's a dance I don't like to do. And I wasn't in the mood, and I just sort of, hit play, and I was really glad that I did. It was good.
Do you have any others that you?
No, those are really just sort of like I said, the two standouts from the last week.
We'll wrap up with this whole series that's on Stars.
Mm-hmm.
That there's only 2 episodes of it. It's called Men in Kilts, and it's the 2 of the actors from Outlander, and they just go on like road trips with each other.
Oh my gosh.
It is so ridiculous, but if for my Outlander fans out there,
wait, is it the actual, like, is it like documentary style, or
yeah
fun?
So it's Sam Heughan who plays Jamie, and
is he
Graham,
the main hot guy?
Yeah, he's the main hottie. and then Graham McTavish, who plays one of his uncles.
Okay.
And
that's great.
Yeah. And they just get in adventures, basically.
Oh my gosh. Men in Kilts?
Yes.
I mean, the title alone.
They're just not even trying to hide it. They're like, this is what you want. Here it is.
Yep. I'm going to lay it all out for you right now. In 3 words.
Yeah. And so there is a little bit like they go and learn about the Highland Games and why that came about. And, so there's a little history thrown in there, but but they're not hiding what the show's about.
Right. Oh, love it. I'll have to, I was doing a Stars free trial, and I can't remember when it's over. So I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. And I mean, Outlander is great. But this is just like a little.
Yeah, I started Outlander, and I was watching it with Nick, and he immediately was like, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, okay, we'll watch something else, but I need to come back to this, because I was enjoying it.
Yeah, I can see that. Although he may stick with it and end up enjoying it more as it goes.
Yeah, I mean, because there was definitely, I think that's kind of what made him start watching it with me, was it's an interesting story, and I do think kind of at the beginning they're setting up certain romances, and I can imagine as the story develops there's a little more there, and
there's a lot more depth, and there's more about the the intricacies of the history that they're telling and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Anyway.
Well, so
look at us. It's almost been an hour.
It has. And this is only the first episode for the week, because we held some back because we had so much while we were gone. Yeah. And so later this week, we'll have another episode coming out. And I think, based on some of what I was reading, maybe it needs to be weather themed. I don't know.
Okay.
Or maybe we'll be over that by this.
We'll be like, let's forget.
Let's forget that there's such a thing as weather.
Yeah.
For a few days at least.
Because apparently it's supposed to rain like all week this week. So.
And then I heard that there's supposed to be another possible winter storm.
Don't say that.
I know.
To me. Get out of here.
On that note, I'm going to have to go run and hide. So cross our fingers.
Yes, and our toes, all
everything.
Yeah.
And we'll see you later this week, or talk to you later this week.
Yeah.